The war room of the Galactic Council's flagship domination buzzed with what could generously be called confidence and more accurately be described as cosmic-level stupidity. Commander Vextal, a 7-foot reptilian whose scales practically gleamed with arrogance, but stood before the holographic display, showing a small blue planet spinning peacefully in space. "Gentlemen." "Bin." Vextal hissed, his forked tongue flicking out in what passed for amusement among his species. "I present to you the perfect warm-up exercise for our new recruits. Earth. Third planet from an unremarkable star. Inhabited by a species that only recently discovered how to split atoms without immediately blowing themselves up. Admiral Quindar, whose bird-like features were currently arranged in what his species considered a smug expression, ruffled his iridescent feathers and squawked his disagreement. "Commander, surely you jest. My intelligence reports indicate these humans are barely out of their caves. They still use projectile weapons. Projectile weapons? In the 43rd century. General Zorg Hol, whose insectoid compound eyes somehow managed to convey supreme condescension, clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter. "Admiral, you're being far too generous. My scouts report they're still burning fossil fuels for energy." "Fossil fuels. They dig up dead organisms and set them on fire to make their primitive machines work." It's almost endearing in its simplicity. The three commanders gathered around the holographic display, watching satellite feeds of Earth's major cities. New York, London, Tokyo, all bustling with what appeared to be completely oblivious humans going about their daily lives, utterly unaware that their planet had just been selected as target practice for the galaxy's most advanced military force. "Look at them," Vextal continued, zooming in on a traffic jam in downtown Manhattan. "They can't even coordinate their personal transportation efficiently. They sit in metal boxes, burning their precious fossil fuels, moving at speeds that would embarrass a sedated sloth. And we're supposed to believe this species poses any kind of threat?" Quindar preened his feathers smugly. "The betting pool among my officers has gotten quite entertaining. The over-under on total conquest time is currently sitting at 4 hours. 12 minutes. I personally wagered on 3 hours flat. These humans don't even have a unified planetary government. They're divided into nearly 200 separate political entities, constantly bickering among themselves about resources and territory." "Exactly my point," Zorg Hul buzzed excitedly. "They're so busy fighting each other. They'll never organize an effective defense against us. My tactical computers project a 97% probability of complete surrender within the first hour of contact. The remaining 3% accounts for the possibility that some of them might be too stupid to understand our surrender demands." The commanders shared what passed for laughter among their respective species, a sound that would have made a human think of nails on chalkboards mixed with dying animals. They were so confident, so absolutely certain of their superiority, that they'd already begun planning the victory celebration. "I've taken the liberty of ordering the good champagne," Vextal announced. "The real stuff from the Andromedan vineyards. We should be toasting our success before their sun sets on what they quaintly call their Western Hemisphere." What none of these brilliant military minds had bothered to consider was that a species capable of going from horse-drawn carriages to space travel in less than a century might be slightly more resourceful than their intelligence reports suggested. But then again, that's what made it so much fun. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Colonel Jake Bulldog Morrison was having the best day of his career. The gruff, 50-something veteran stood in the center of NORAD's most classified command center, watching long-range sensors track the approaching alien fleet with the kind of grim satisfaction usually reserved for watching your ex-wife's new husband get audited by the IRS. Well, Morrison growled, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who'd spent 30 years turning civilians into soldiers and enemies into statistics. "Looks like we finally get to field test all those toys the Pentagon's been throwing money at for the past decade. Captain Rodriguez, what's our ETA on the welcoming committee?" Captain Luna Rodriguez, perched in the pilot's seat of the most advanced fighter craft humanity had ever built, was checked her instruments with the casual precision of someone who'd spent her adult life making impossible things look easy. "Bulldog, I've got 12 hours of flight time logged in the Aurora-class stealth interceptor, and I'm currently sitting in orbit about 300 miles above the Pacific, completely invisible to anyone not using human-built sensors. These alien hotshots have no idea we even have a space program, let alone orbital defense platforms." "Outstanding," Morrison replied, turning to his demolition specialist. "Tank, tell me you've got something special prepared for our uninvited guests." Sergeant Tommy Tank O'Brien, a compact man whose Irish accent became more pronounced whenever he discussed explosives, grinned with the enthusiasm of a kid on Christmas morning. "Colonel, I've been waiting my entire career for this moment. We've got orbital kinetic bombardment systems, plasma artillery that can core a mountain, and my personal favorite, the Peacemaker missile system. Each warhead contains enough antimatter to make Hiroshima look like a firecracker." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Gentlemen, lady, for the past 50 years, every science fiction movie, every alien invasion story, every piece of popular culture has portrayed humanity as the underdog. Poor little Earth, with our primitive technology and our quaint nuclear weapons, getting steamrolled by technologically superior alien invaders." He paused, letting his words sink in, then continued with a smile that would have made a shark proud. "What these particular aliens failed to research is that we've been preparing for this exact scenario since 1947. Project Blue Book wasn't just about investigating UFO sightings. It was about reverse engineering every piece of alien technology we could get our hands on, improving it, weaponizing it, and then building better versions." Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system. "Colonel, I'm reading approximately 200 alien vessels approaching from the outer system. Mixed configuration, looks like they're expecting a parade instead of a war. They're not even running stealth protocols." "That's because they think we're still throwing rocks at each other," Morrison replied. "Tank, are the ground-based installations ready?" "Every major city has a concealed defense grid," O'Brien confirmed. "Surface-to-orbit missile launchers hidden in office buildings, energy weapons disguised as cell phone towers, and enough automated defense systems to make the entire planet look like a very unfriendly porcupine. The aliens will be in for quite the surprise when they realize that our primitive civilization has been playing a very long game." Morrison walked over to the main display, studying the approaching alien fleet with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades planning for this exact moment. "You know, gentlemen, there's something deeply satisfying about being underestimated. These aliens look at our cities, our technology, our apparent lack of unified government, and they see weakness. What they don't see is that we've been building toward this moment for generations." "Should we attempt diplomatic contact first?" Rodriguez asked. "You know, follow the protocols." Morrison's laugh was about as diplomatic as a tactical nuclear weapon. "Captain, we've been monitoring their communications for the past 6 hours. They're treating this like a training exercise for their newest recruits. They're literally betting on how quickly they can conquer us. I think diplomacy might be slightly premature." The colonel turned to his communications officer. "Lieutenant, open a channel to all defense installations, orbital platforms, and stealth units. Use the code phrase Welcome Wagon. It's time to show our visitors what human hospitality really looks like." The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace with all the subtlety of a marching band in a library. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive blue planet grow larger on his view screen, practically vibrating with anticipation. This was going to be easier than conquering a daycare center. "Open a channel to the planet," he commanded, adjusting his ceremonial armor for what he assumed would be the most anticlimactic surrender in galactic history. "Citizens of Earth, this is Commander Vextal of the Galactic Council. Your planet has been selected for immediate conquest. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick and relatively painless. Resist, and we'll make sure your extinction is educational for other primitive species." The response from Earth came exactly 3 seconds later, and it wasn't what anyone in the alien fleet was expecting. Galactic Council. This is Colonel Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Command. We've received your surrender demand and would like to offer our official response. Vextal's scales practically shimmered with amusement. The United Earth Defense Command? How delightfully optimistic. Very well, Primitive, deliver your surrender. Morrison's voice came through the comm system with the warmth of liquid nitrogen. Our official response is as follows. Go ahead and try it, you overgrown lizard. Earth cordially invites you to perform an anatomically impossible act upon yourself, and we look forward to adding your technology to our growing collection of alien artifacts. The bridge fell silent. Admiral Quindar's feathers ruffled in confusion. Did that Primitive just insult us? I believe it did, General Zorg Hool buzzed uncertainly. This is highly irregular. They're supposed to be cowering in fear, not engaging in verbal combat. Vextal's amusement was rapidly transforming into annoyance. Perhaps they need a demonstration of our technological superiority. Admiral, launch a preliminary bombardment of their largest population center. Make it spectacular. Quindar's forces launched their opening salvo, 6 plasma torpedoes aimed directly at New York City. The weapons were designed to demonstrate overwhelming firepower while minimizing actual damage, a show of force that would bring the humans to their knees without destroying valuable infrastructure. The torpedoes made it approximately halfway to their target before they simply disappeared. Admiral, Vextal's voice carried the first hint of concern. Where did our weapons go? I'm not entirely certain, Commander. Sensors indicate they were intercepted by some kind of energy field, but our intelligence reports indicated no such defensive capability. Morrison's voice crackled through the comm system again, and this time he sounded genuinely amused. Oh, those? Yeah, we've had orbital defense grids for about 15 years now. Nice try, though. Really impressive light show. Our kids would love it. That's when the human counterattack began. The first indication that something had gone horribly wrong with the alien invasion plan came when 12 ships in the alien fleet's outer perimeter simply vanished from sensors. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. What just happened to Squadron 7? Vextal demanded. Unknown, sir. They were there one moment, then nothing. No debris, no distress calls, no energy signatures. It's as if they never existed. Captain Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system, dripping with false concern. Oh, did you lose some ships? That's unfortunate. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Aurora Squadron. We've been sitting here watching you for the past hour, and I have to say, your formation discipline is terrible. Also, those 12 ships you're looking for? They're currently drifting in space with their crews stunned unconscious. We prefer to take prisoners when possible. Impossible, Admiral Quindar squawked. Our sensors show no hostile vessels in the area. That's because our ships are designed to be invisible to sensors like yours, Rodriguez replied cheerfully. We've been studying your technology for decades. Did you really think we'd sit around waiting for you to show up without preparing a few surprises? The alien fleet suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't see, using weapons they didn't understand, but with tactics that made no sense according to every military manual in their possession. And that's when General Zorg Hool made the comment that would haunt him for the rest of his very short career. This is just a minor setback. Deploy the ground forces. These primitives may have some crude orbital defenses, but they certainly don't have the technology to resist a proper planetary assault. Morrison's laughter came through the comm system like the sound of approaching thunder. General, I'd like you to meet someone special. This is Staff Sergeant Maria Vasquez, commander of our Drop Trooper program. Sergeant, would you like to introduce yourself to our guests? A new voice joined the conversation, female, confident, and carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who'd spent her career making other people's lives significantly more complicated. Gentlemen, welcome to Earth. I hope you brought your running shoes because class is about to begin. General Zorg-Hull's confidence lasted exactly 47 minutes after the first alien ground forces touched down on Earth's surface. His initial assessment had been reasonable by galactic standards: establish orbital superiority, deploy ground forces to major population centers, accept surrender, move on to the next target. Simple, efficient, and utterly effective against every other species they'd encountered. Unfortunately for the general, he'd never encountered anything quite like Staff Sergeant Maria Havoc Vasquez. Alpha Team, this is Havoc. Her voice crackled through the comm system to her squad of drop troopers as they prepared to launch from their orbital insertion vehicle. We've got approximately 3,000 alien ground forces setting up shop in downtown Los Angeles. Intel suggests they're using standard occupation protocols, which means they're expecting local law enforcement with handguns and maybe a few military units with conventional weapons. Corporal Mike Boomer Thompson, whose power armor was loaded with enough explosive ordnance to level a city block, chuckled through his helmet comm. Sarge, should we tell them about the upgrades? Negative, Boomer. Let them figure it out the hard way. It's more educational that way. The drop troopers' insertion pod screamed through Earth's atmosphere like falling meteors, their heat shields glowing white-hot as they descended toward the alien landing zone. Each pod contained a single soldier equipped with power armor that would have made a tank jealous, and weapons that operated on principles the aliens had never encountered. Vasquez's pod hit the ground first, creating a crater in the middle of Pershing Square and sending a shockwave through the alien forces that had been setting up their command post. The pod split open like a metallic flower, revealing a 7-foot figure in matte black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "This is Drop Trooper Alpha 1, Vasquez announced through her external speakers, her voice carrying across the plaza with mechanical precision. You are trespassing on human territory. You have 10 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why that was a tactical error." The alien commander, a mid-ranking officer named Subgeneral Crix Tal, stared at the armored figure with a mixture of confusion and disdain. One primitive in ceremonial armor? This is your planet's elite response? 8 seconds, Vasquez replied, raising her primary weapon, a device that looked like someone had crossed a rifle with a small particle accelerator. Destroy it, Crix Tal ordered his troops. The aliens opened fire with plasma weapons that should have reduced any Earth-based armor to molten slag. Instead, the energy beam struck Vasquez's armor and simply dispersed, absorbed by materials that had been designed specifically to counter plasma-based weapons. Time's up, Vasquez announced. Then she proceeded to provide the aliens with a very educational demonstration of why you should never underestimate a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Her first shot hit the alien command vehicle, which didn't explode so much as simply cease to exist, then converted to its component atoms by a weapon that operated on principles the aliens didn't even have names for. Her second shot took out their communications array, leaving the ground forces cut off from their orbiting fleet. That's when the rest of Alpha Team arrived. Boomer's pod landed in the middle of the alien formation, and the man himself emerged with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting his entire career to field test experimental weapons against hostile targets. His armor was slightly bulkier than Vasquez's, designed to carry the kind of ordnance that made military engineers wake up in cold sweats. "Sarge, can I use the fun stuff now?" he asked, hefting a weapon that looked like it had been designed by someone with a doctorate in physics and a serious attitude problem. "Light them up, Boomer." The weapon fired a series of micro-singularities, each one creating a brief gravitational anomaly that turned whatever it hit into a very small, very dense, but very temporary black hole. The alien forces found themselves facing an enemy that was using the fundamental forces of the universe as ammunition. Corporal Sarah Ghost Mitchell materialized out of thin air behind the alien rear guard, her stealth systems making her effectively invisible until she decided otherwise. Her specialty was close-quarters combat, which she demonstrated by introducing several aliens to the concept of human martial arts enhanced by power armor that could bench press a small building. Ghost commented as she casually tossed a half-ton alien soldier through the air like a rag doll. They really should have done more research before picking a fight with us. The alien forces, trained for combat against species that used conventional weapons and tactics, found themselves completely outclassed by opponents who fought like they were auditioning for the most violent action movie ever made. Every assumption they'd made about human combat capabilities was being systematically demolished by soldiers who treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. Private First Class Tony Medic Rodriguez, the squad's medical specialist, was providing battlefield medical support while simultaneously demonstrating that human medics were apparently trained to be as dangerous as frontline combat troops. His medical scanners had been repurposed to identify alien weak points, and his healing equipment had been modified to work in reverse when necessary. Sarge, medic called out as he used a medical laser to perform what could generously be called surgery on several attacking aliens. I'm reading massive casualties among the enemy forces. Should I render aid? Negative, medic. Save your supplies for anyone who didn't try to conquer our planet. Sub-General Krixtau, watching his forces being systematically dismantled by 5 human soldiers, then finally understood why his species had never encountered anything like this before. They'd been conquering civilizations that fought like civilizations. These humans fought like they were personally offended by the existence of their enemies. Retreat, he ordered, but his communication equipment had been the first casualty of the engagement. Vasquez's voice echoed across the battlefield through her armor speakers. Attention, alien forces. This concludes your introductory lesson in human military doctrine. Class dismissed. The retreat of the alien ground forces from Los Angeles was just the beginning of what military historians would later call the 36-hour educational experience. General Zorg Hole, watching his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos, made the mistake of assuming that the drop troopers were humanity's best and most advanced military unit. He was wrong. They were actually the military equivalent of a warning shot. In the depths of the Pentagon, Colonel Morrison was coordinating a response that would have made Sun Tzu weep with professional pride. Gentlemen, Phase 1 of Operation Welcome Wagon has been completed successfully. The aliens now know that we're not the primitives they expected. Phase 2 will demonstrate exactly how much we've been holding back. The first indication that humanity had been playing a very long game came when the aliens' orbital fleet found itself surrounded by ships that hadn't been there moments before. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system with the satisfaction of someone who'd just revealed a royal flush. Alien fleet, this is Captain Rodriguez of the UEAD's Retribution. You are now surrounded by the entire 5th Fleet of the United Earth Defense Command. We've been waiting in hyperspace for your arrival. Surprise. Admiral Quindar's feathers molted from pure stress. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated no faster-than-light capability. Your intelligence was approximately 30 years out of date, Rodriguez replied cheerfully. We've had hyperspace technology since 2195. We've also had antimatter weapons, plasma shields, and artificial gravity for about as long. We just didn't see any reason to advertise. The human fleet that materialized around the alien forces was a testament to humanity's particular approach to military engineering. If it could be weaponized, it had been weaponized, and if it couldn't be weaponized, they'd found a way to make it explode anyway. The UEAD's Retribution alone outgunned half the alien fleet, its hull bristling with weapons that operated on principles the aliens were only beginning to understand. The ship's main cannon was capable of firing projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, turning kinetic energy into something that could crack a planet's crust. This is impossible, Commander Vextal hissed, his scales having lost their earlier confident shimmer. How does a primitive species develop such advanced technology? Morrison's voice joined the conversation, and this time he sounded genuinely educational. Commander, let me explain something about human nature. We're not actually a primitive species. We're a species that got very good at looking primitive while we figured out how to kill anything that might threaten us. It's called strategic deception. and we've been practicing it for about 50,000 years. The demonstration continued as human forces revealed capabilities that made the alien technology look like stone tools. Orbital platforms that could redirect asteroids, weapons that could manipulate matter at the atomic level, and defense systems that could make entire fleets simply disappear from normal space. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief scientist at the Prometheus Research Facility, joined the conversation from her laboratory deep beneath the Swiss Alps. "Gentlemen, I hope you don't mind, but we've been analyzing your technology during this little skirmish. Your plasma weapons are quite impressive, but they're based on principles we mastered about 20 years ago. Your FTL drives are interesting, but we've been building better ones for decades. Your energy shields are, well, they're adequate for fighting other aliens, I suppose." "Who are you?" Vextal demanded. "I'm the person who's been reverse engineering alien technology since before you were hatched," Vasquez replied with the calm confidence of someone who'd spent her career making the impossible look routine. "Every piece of alien hardware that's ever crashed on Earth, every probe that's ever malfunctioned in our solar system, every piece of debris from alien conflicts has ended up in my laboratory. We've been studying your technology, improving it, and building better versions for longer than your species has had space flight. The human counterattack wasn't just military, it was educational. Every alien weapon system was countered by human technology that had been specifically designed to defeat it. Every tactical maneuver was anticipated by commanders who'd been studying alien military doctrine for decades." Tank's voice joined the conversation from his position in the orbital defense grid. "You know, lads, I've been looking forward to this moment for my entire career. We've got enough firepower in this system to sterilize a small galaxy, and we've been just dying to field test it against someone who actually deserves it." The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that had been preparing for this exact scenario for generations, using technology that was decades ahead of anything they'd encountered. Commanded by officers who'd spent their careers studying how to defeat superior numbers through superior firepower and tactics. "This is Colonel Morrison with the final offer," came the voice from Earth. "You have 1 hour to remove your forces from our solar system. After that, we stop playing nice and start demonstrating why humanity has never been conquered by anyone, anywhere, ever. This is your only warning." The alien fleet, which had arrived expecting to conquer a primitive world, found itself facing the unpleasant realization that they'd just picked a fight with a species that had turned warfare into an art form and had been eagerly waiting for someone to practice on. The alien retreat from Earth space was less of a tactical withdrawal and more of a panicked stampede. Commander Vextal, whose scales had gone from confident shimmer to stress-induced gray, stood on his bridge watching his fleet's sensors track human vessels that seemed to multiply like a virus every time they looked away. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his tactical officer, a question that had been haunting him for the past 6 hours. "Unknown, sir. Every time we get a count, more appear. Current estimate is somewhere between 500 and all of them, sir." Admiral Quinn Dar, whose feathers had molted so severely he looked like he'd been through a windstorm, squawked his disbelief. "This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated a pre-spaceflight civilization with primitive nuclear weapons." Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system one last time, and she sounded genuinely apologetic. "Gentlemen, I'm afraid there's been a bit of a misunderstanding. You see, we've been spacefaring for over 3 centuries. We've had colonies in 6 different star systems for the past 50 years. We've been watching your Galactic Council for about as long as it's existed. And we've been preparing for this conversation for decades." Colonel Morrison joined the channel, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd just watched a perfectly executed plan come together. "The thing is, gentlemen, we learned a long time ago that the best way to avoid being conquered is to make sure nobody thinks you're worth conquering. So we've been very careful to maintain the appearance of a primitive, divided species while we built the most advanced military force in this galaxy. The final insult came from Tank, whose Irish accent had grown thicker as his enthusiasm had increased. You see, lads, we've been studying every species in your little council for the better part of a century. We know your weaknesses, your technology, your tactics, and your favorite breakfast cereals. We've been waiting for one of you to make the mistake of actually trying to conquer us. As the alien fleet limped away from Earth at maximum speed, their long-range sensors detected something that made their retreat even more urgent. Human ships were following them, not aggressively, but with the patient determination of predators who wanted to make sure their prey got the message. This is your escort to the edge of the solar system, Staff Sergeant Vasquez announced from her upgraded drop trooper insertion craft. We want to make sure you don't get lost on your way out. Also, we'll be sending a small delegation to visit your homeworlds in the next few weeks. Nothing hostile, just a friendly diplomatic mission to discuss the terms of your surrender. 6 months later, in the same war room where the invasion had been planned, the surviving members of the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence, listening to recordings of human diplomatic communications that had been arriving with disturbing regularity. They want to discuss mutual defense agreements. General Zorg buzzed nervously. They're offering to protect us from other hostile species. They've sent technical specifications for defensive systems that make our best weapons look like toys, Vextal added, his scales having never quite returned to their original color. They want to share technology for the betterment of galactic civilization. They've invited us to something called a barbecue, Quindar squawked in confusion. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but they promise the food will be out of this world. The recordings continued, each one more disturbing than the last. Humans offering to mediate disputes between alien species, providing humanitarian aid to war-torn worlds, and generally behaving like the kind of benevolent galactic neighbors that the Council had spent centuries trying to avoid becoming. They're treating us like we're their friends, Vextal said in horror. Worse, Zorg replied. They're treating us like we're their students. They want to teach us about conflict resolution and sustainable resource management. The final recording was from Colonel Morrison, and his voice carried the unmistakable tone of someone who was genuinely enjoying himself. Gentlemen, we hope you've learned something valuable from this experience. Earth is now accepting applications for membership in our new Galactic Defense Initiative. We're looking for species who are interested in protecting peaceful civilizations from aggressive neighbors. The pay is excellent. The benefits include access to human technology, and the retirement plan is out of this world. As the Council listened to humanity's offer to transform them from conquerors into protectors, they realized they'd made a fundamental error in their assessment. They'd assumed that humans were primitive because they appeared to be fighting among themselves. What they'd failed to understand was that humans were so advanced, so secure in their technological superiority, that they could afford to maintain the appearance of being primitive while they waited for someone to make the mistake of threatening them. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was offering to teach everyone else how to be better neighbors. The joke, as they finally understood, had always been on them. And somewhere in the depths of NORAD, Colonel Morrison was already planning humanity's next surprise for any other species that might be foolish enough to underestimate Earth. After all, there were a lot of other civilizations out there, and humans had always been excellent teachers.